Hello everyone, Outlaw here, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite mechanics in all of modern Magic, and that is Foretell. Now, for those of you who don't know, Foretell originates from Kaldheim, and it's worded that you can pay 2 on any time on your turn to foretell a card with Foretell. Then you may cast it for its foretell cost later, but you can't cast it on the same turn you foretell it. Although you still can cast on your opponent's turn directly after you foretell. So you can foretell, you can't play it on this turn, but you can play it on your next turn or like your opponent's upcoming turn. And so now let's talk about why I think this mechanic is so great, because it really is a stellar mechanic. And so my first point is it makes you kind of need to think a lot more about what you're giving your opponent, because especially in Standard, when you foretell a card, you give them incomplete information. They know you foretell the card, they don't know what it is. So usually in Standard, there will be 3 options really for what you can have. You can either have Behold the Multiverse, a card draw spell, Alrund's Epiphany, take an extra turn spell, or Saw It Coming, a counter spell. Now you could also have a few other things like potentially after sideboarding Crush the Weak, which is a Pyroclasm effect, or even Demon Bolt, which is a straight up removal spell. And so now this can cause your opponents to need to play around these things, and that just creates a very interesting dynamic for your opponent, but more so for you, because you know that maybe, let's say it's a counter spell matchup, so you have counter spells, you're playing blue-red, they're also playing blue-red. So let's say it's turn 2, or turn 4 actually. So there's actually some merit to foretelling an Alrund's Epiphany, because they kind of have to respect it. In any other matchup, obviously it would be different, because there's no point in them waiting. They'll just play out their stuff, because if they don't play out their stuff, they're just gonna lose, because you have to play stuff to win Magic, obviously. But in a counterspell matchup, they might be trying to wait for 7 mana so they can hold up a counterspell as well as slam out their Goldspan Dragon, which makes you have 2 counterspells. And that's one of the lines. Also, it's a very interesting dynamic, because if it's turn 2, let's say you have a Behold the Multiverse, a Saw It Coming in hand. And so now you can either foretell the Behold the Multiverse or the Saw It Coming. And let's say you have a tapped land in hand. So next turn you're still going to have 2 mana. So to answer this question properly, you can't really, because you have to consider what your opponent's doing. And Foretell kind of makes you think about this. Makes you think if it's okay to tap for 2. And if it's a bit of the later game, you need to think if it's okay to tap for 2 to play your to make your Alrund's Epiphany cheaper, if it's kind of signaling to them that you have it. Although then again, it could also just be a Saw It Coming. So you can quickly see how it kind of becomes an onion of different interactions and different lines you can take. And that's what I love about Foretell so much. And Foretell is an amazing mechanic for Standard. If you go into stronger formats than Standard, it's a very bad mechanic, basically. Just because decks are not gonna have any Foretell cards, or if they do, they're only gonna have one, so then there's no kind of mystery or surprise to it. There is still the sequencing of basically putting a down payment on your card, which is still kind of cool, but it's still not a very interesting mechanic when you give them perfect knowledge when you foretell something. But yeah. But I also want to finish off by talking about it in draft. And in draft, it is such a cool mechanic. And so, because there's so many interactions, a lot of powerful creatures have Foretell. For example, Augury Raven, a 4-mana 3/3 with Foretell for 1 and a blue. Now, if you just play a 4-mana 3/3 with flying, you're doing pretty well for limited, let's be real. A 3/3 is pretty fat, but also flying is about 100 times more valuable than it would be in any other set in Kaldheim, because in blue, it's actually pretty rare. Most of the flying is just in white with the stupid little angels, and some in black too. So being a blue flyer makes it more valuable. And also, most of the flyers, the angels, are like 1/3s and 2/3s in Kaldheim draft. And obviously this is not super relevant because Kaldheim draft is already done. But I just want to talk about how beautiful this mechanic is. And yeah. And so then also one thing you have to always remember is if you foretell something, your opponent can't play it that turn. So if they foretell their pump spell and then attack, now they might forget that they can't play it, and then you have a free block. That's happened to me actually, like once or twice, which obviously isn't that many times, but it's funny nonetheless. And then also it can bait your opponent into save and removal when you just foretell a removal spell yourself, or just like a card draw spell like Behold the Multiverse. Like, foretell just gives you so many lines to manipulate your opponent. It is so cool and such a great mechanic, and is probably my favorite mechanic that I have seen, like, design while I was around, aside from Delve. And you might be saying Delve is broken, but Delve is just a great mechanic. And it even allowed them to grit around saying they would not reprint Ancestral Recall. It's on the reserve list, and they still reprinted that. Isn't that great? I know. Anyways, that was all for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have the most wonderful day, and I hope that your Auron's Epiphanies go through uncountered. See ya.